Peace and much love. I am Minister Sun One. Welcome to the Temple of Hip Hop. The Temple of Hip Hop is a ministry, archive, school, and society. If you have your Gospel of Hip Hop, I'd ask that you open up to the 17th Overstanding the Temple of Hip Hop and turn to page 646. I'm going to begin reading at paragraph 12. Or actually, no, I'm actually going to go to the top of the page, or right above paragraph 12, to the first full sentence. Those of us who do think very deeply about the past, present, and future states of hip hop as an internationally celebrated urban culture and lifestyle eventually join the Temple of Hip Hop. Our society practices hip hop as consciousness in an effort to establish hip hop as a nation. Our role today is to be the nation that we would like to see. Our role today is to think and act like the nation we desire our children to live within. Here, we envision an urban spiritual movement that brings awareness to the rejected, awakens the minds of those without guidance, saves our people from their own errors in life, and restores them to spiritual maturity in peace. Not with judgment and criticism, but with a sincere care for those who simply do not know or have forgotten spiritual law. We believe and perceive in God. The Temple of Hip Hop continues to investigate, preserve, and promote the reality and nature of God through the language and culture of hip hop. We exist to interpret and teach the spiritual reality of hip hop itself, as well as hip hop's relations to the divine. The Temple of Hip Hop does not induce mystical experiences, it acknowledges them. With God's guidance, we teach healing through awareness, rehabilitation through truth, and peace through purpose. The authenticity and trueness of our teachings are based upon its compatibility with the apprentice's own heart. You will know if you are a part of our nation by the feeling that such an idea gives you. With God's guidance, we envision a hip-hop society that empowers itself through a heightened level of spiritual skill and unified comprehension of its own cultural principles and codes. One that would teach its people to live beyond the material world and their own physical senses, cravings, wants, desires, etc., in an effort to experience a heightened level of health, love, awareness, and wealth, and most of all, truth. I wanted to open with that real quick, just so that we get reacclimated as to the inner soul of what the Temple of Hip Hop is, which our teacher is going to go more in depth into our present state and how we're going to move forward with this spirit in what was laid out in the Gospel of Hip Hop as to what we're actually looking to achieve for hip hoppers. What is the purpose of the Temple of Hip Hop for the hip hopper? In just to go back to paragraph 12, here we envision an urban spiritual movement that brings awareness to the rejected, awakens the minds of those without guidance, saves our people from their own errors in life, and restores them to spiritual maturity and peace. Hip hoppers. This is for hip hoppers. Others have their doctrines, which help them in certain ways to hopefully achieve the same things that was just laid out by the teacher right there. But we specifically need to keep this in mind as we move ahead of what is the purpose of our group coming together. Why are we? Again, we know that God has a real relationship with us and is taking us through this life, through this period of time, with a purpose. And the purpose really is help. To help your sister, to help your brother, to help your family, to help those that think like you, to help those that feel the same way about life that you do. And that for us as a group to actually unify and move forward in that spirit. I thank you for attending this class. You are always appreciated, and you should know that it's a great thing that you even care to be a part of these sermons, really. So peace and much love to you. I am Minister Sun One. Allow me to introduce the one, the only, Master Teacher, KRS-One.
Thank you for that, Sun One. And just in case you guys are wondering what these cans are up here for, they weren't supposed to be here. we were doing our own little thing earlier on, which I will get into in terms of art. Just in terms of art, we were doing our own situation. Those that know, sometimes throughout the year, when I have time, I do specialized art. And when I do that art, obviously I'm using these cans and stuff like that, but sometimes I do messages like love yourself, believe in yourself, just stuff you could put on your wall and last forever, but it's original KRS-One art. And so those that collect my art or art from rappers or hip-hop icons, other graffiti writers, I should say, those that actually collect that might, find this something you may want to get into. Go to krs-one.com, krs-one.com, and you can see there. Sometimes we put up murals and little canvases and things like that you can actually purchase, help us out with what's going on here. But it's really about catching it at the right time. And we was just making making preparations for some more of this art. And Sun One was supposed to move the cans from the table, but we started right on time. We're actually just getting in from New York. And big up to everybody in New York. That blizzard last week was absolutely crazy. We drove right into it in that sense, got snowed in. On that Monday, left on that Tuesday. But we got a lot accomplished while we were in New York during that time. And so some of which I'm going to go over with you now. Sun One, Minister Sun One has started this off. Let me shout out Minister G. Simone. She's with us as well, the acronologist. Let me also shout out Minister Zinaru. Let me shout out all of the temple members that have been with us for last year, the year before that, those who have read the gospel with us. There's about 30 of us, so I can't go through everyone's name, but you are in our hearts and in our minds, and we thank you for your participation in this. This is the unity of hip-hop's culture. That's what we're dealing with. I'm coming right off of what Minister Sun One was dealing with about why we are here. Why are we here? Why are we gathered like this? Well, I'm going to start off first with just a little written statement. I usually start off like that anyway, just with a little written statement. But this statement here is about not only why, you'll see as I read, you'll see that not only is it about why we are gathered as a temple of hip hop, but you'll also see your role in it as teachers, as defenders of hip hop's actual culture. And I'll talk a little bit about this week and some of what we were doing this week to push hip hop forward as culture. All of this I'm going to go over right now. Let me get right to it. Let me just start off by saying that this is about defense. This is for the student. This is for the apprentice, for you listening. Those that are serious about teaching hip-hop for a living, those that are going to argue for hip-hop's nationhood, those that are going to argue for sovereignty, those that are going to teach hip-hop to others. That's what this is about, and it's about defense. There's a defense to it that I'm going to get into. So this defense is against what I'm calling cultural colonists. Get this word real quick, cultural colonists. As a matter of fact, you know what? Simone, take this from me, please. This is and just before we start here, I just want to bring this up. We was looking at this. This is just another one of the proclamations, one of the ancient ones that we received, but we discovered it in our basement, actually, and I pulled it out. Those that have seen the other proclamations, you'll notice we have about 8 of these that declare hip-hop a culture, but this particular one talks about Hip-Hop Appreciation Day, the actual day itself, and it's just interesting, but I'm not going to get into this now, but I have it here as well, Thank you. We probably should have organized this before we even got up here. But it's all good. We're home. So look, this is about defense against cultural colonists. That's what we're starting with here. Coming off of what Minister Sun One was just saying about why we all here. This is about unity of thought. This is about our children's heritage. This is about the preservation of hip hop. But to do that, you have to have your sword and your shield ready. You have to have your intellectual and spiritual sword and shield ready. So when you know how to, when it's time to speak, you know how to speak and what perspective to come from, backed up by truth, facts, and law. So as I often teach, the authority to teach hip hop does not come from me. Okay, let's start there. It doesn't come from me or any pioneer in that sense. It comes from one's own historical and intellectual accuracy. Get what I'm saying here? I'm going to say it one more time. The authority to teach hip hop does not actually come from a specific person. It comes from your mastery of the subject. Knowing the true history of hip-hop's teaching profession and approaching hip-hop's actual existence with intellectual accuracy and cultural literacy produces one's teaching authority. Did you get that? Now, I'm starting here because I'm going to bring it right back over to, quote-unquote, me as KRS-One, but this has to be said first. I'm talking about intellectual defense, your scholastic defense against cultural colonists, those who want to come into your culture and establish themselves as intellectuals, because they have a journalism degree. They say, I could teach hip hop. Because they have a musicology degree, they say, I could teach hip hop. Because they have a law degree, because they've studied other things, their other thing degrees give them the ability to teach our sacred culture with no mastery of the culture, nothing. This is what we have to defend hip hop against. And I'm giving you the first sword of that defense right here. First, realize that a true master of the hip hop arts and sciences is not ordained from one person to another. We will get to that in a minute. There is that. But first The core part of it, have you mastered the subject? That's the core. This is the first piece right here. Have you mastered the subject? And this is what you want to ask anyone teaching hip hop. Have you mastered what you're talking about? And show me the example of that mastery. The authority to teach hip hop does not come from me. It comes from one's own historical and intellectual accuracy, knowing the true history of hip hop's teaching profession. Knowing the history of hip hop's teaching profession. This is it right here. And approaching hip hop's actual existence with intellectual accuracy and cultural literacy produces one's teaching authority. Such an authority, although really produced by one's own mastery of the facts, is also produced by who is actually one's teacher. This is the second weapon. Young hip-hop scholars speaking truth regarding the existence of hip-hop must also be able to defend themselves against others claiming some kind of scholastic authority over them regarding hip-hop. This is how cultures get stolen away all the time. You see it with museums. You walk into a museum, they're showing you, South American culture, ancient Mayan, Olmec, even Aztec, and later on Mexican culture. They're showing you South America, they're showing you Colombia, they're showing you this in the museum, but there's no Colombians, no Peruvians, no Mexicans, none of the people that are on display in the museum are the actual curators telling you about what's being displayed. There's always some other person, other than the person being displayed, telling you about what's being displayed. You never have in the museum, in the Mayan section, let's just say, a Mayan person, a Mayan scholar saying, yes, this is my heritage and here's how it goes down. This is called cultural colonialism, where people take your culture and they make it anything, they interpret it in any way they need to interpret it to satisfy their audience. So your culture is on display. Your culture is on display, but you are not interpreting your culture for yourself. Someone else who has stepped in that place is now interpreting your culture and telling you what you're saying about your culture might not be accurate or might not be true. In other words, they've set themselves up in your culture in such a way that they can question you on your ancestral heritage, even though they have nothing to do with it. This is what hip-hop is going through right now, and this is why the temple of hip-hop exists. When you talk about why we exist, what's the point? Well, here's the point. That hip-hop, the temple of hip-hop, is the one institution that is not only original hip-hop, but we are independent and sovereign. Let's start, and I'm going to prove that to you right here. We're going to get into it because that's part of your defense. What's the first part of your defense? I've mastered my craft. Whoever arguing with you, they ain't mastered a craft. Here's where you get them at the first, right, ding, ding, you come right out. Bam, Tyson style, not more than 1 minute in the ring. Why? Because this person's claiming to be a hip-hop scholar because they may have read 2 books, but they can't do nothing that the books are recording or even suggesting. Spit your rhyme. Break. Let me see your graph book. Your DJ skill. Can you beatbox? What makes you a teacher of hip-hop? Because you have a journalism degree or what? You watched hip-hop on TV? This is what we have to be careful of. This is how they steal cultures. Now, this goes even further in this idea. Look at it, okay? First, master your craft. Second, who is your teacher? You see, everywhere in the world, people, when they say, I'm going to go to school to learn, the first thing people say is, well, what school are you going to? See, this is the first thing. First thing they say, well, what school? If you go into college, it's one thing to say, well, I'm going to a community college. And people be like, that's great. Make sure you get that education. Any college you go to is great. But if you say, I'm going to Harvard, all of a sudden something comes over you. All of a sudden something comes over the person. You're going to Harvard? Yes, I'm going to Harvard to study medicine. And what's the difference? Well, the difference is that Harvard is supposed to be at a certain standard of excellence when it comes to universities, colleges, and certain subjects. Yale University, Stanford University, Harvard University. These universities stand out because of the people they have traditionally produced. It's a club for the rich. The highly intellectual seems to get there as well, people from MIT and all of this. So when you're going to get an education, when you're entering an institution for education, based on how deep you want to get into the education is going to be determined by what school you go to. A lawyer from a regular state university is looked differently than a lawyer from Yale University, or a lawyer from, wherever these universities are, what is called Ivy League universities. So I mention all of this to say, as a student, as an apprentice of the Temple of Hip Hop, you should know that you are with the Harvard, the Yale, the MIT of hip hop institutions. We're not saying this just because we're into ourselves. We're teaching facts here. And this is what is extremely important. Put the ego aside. I'm not here grandizing and telling you, oh, KRS is all that. No, please maintain your maturity. Put that to the side. We're talking straight facts because as students and as apprentice, that's what you're arguing. Your authority is based on the facts. Your authority is based on your mastery of the truth. And this is what defends the culture. This is what progresses the culture. So we come with, who is your teacher? What is your institution? If you're here with the Temple of Hip Hop, then KRS-One is your teacher, and your institution is the Temple of Hip Hop. You are at the absolute center and core of the hip hop nation. You are in it. There is no one else in our position ever. No one. Okay? Others have other positions, and we respect their other positions. But when it comes to the culture of hip hop, we are surpassed by none. Now, you should know that. This is not bragging. This is not posturing. This is the truth. And when you realize that truth and internalize it, your authority begins to rise. Someone coming at you saying, oh yeah, I'm a hip hop scholar. What school did you study hip hop in is your next question. Right after, what element have you mastered? And not what element do you know or can do. What element have you mastered? Show me the mastery of your element. After that, if they can do that or if they can't do that, the next question is, well, what institution have you studied with? What school, what hip-hop school have you studied with to claim authority to teach the culture? What school did you go to? Now, you, on the other hand, can say, I've been to the Temple of Hip-Hop, and I've been taught by hip-hop's first teacher and the architect of the culture itself. That doesn't mean much for me. That means a hell of a lot for you. Who is your teacher? Young hip-hop scholars must know the truth. And the truth is that long before anyone was even thinking about teaching hip-hop, KRS-One, your teacher, was called teacher all over the world regarding hip-hop. That's a fact. Nobody's bragging. Put that to the side. The truth is, before anybody was even thinking about teaching hip-hop, when we started this, the teaching of hip-hop was silly. It was something that people, it was like, what are you doing? What are you talking about teaching hip-hop? And we was like, oh no, there's more to hip-hop than just this music. Before anybody was even thinking about teaching hip hop, KRS-One, your teacher, and the class you in right now, was called teacher all over the world regarding hip hop for your own defense against those that might belittle you or claim some kind of teaching authority over you. It is important that you remember how it was your teacher, KRS-One, that began the first actual teaching of hip hop with such songs as South Bronx, 1986, Why Is That, 1989, and You Must Learn, 1989. These are the facts. You see, we're talking about authority to teach hip hop. And the word authority has the word author in it. This is what makes you an authority. You are the originator. You are the first. You are the initiator, the trendsetter of what's going on or the subject being studied. So again, this is not so much for me. This is for the apprentice and or student to understand what you're getting, your empowerment. Your empowerment is based on the integrity of not only the institution, but the person in which you're studying from, you're being taught from. And what you're learning here is that, first and foremost, your teacher is the one who started teaching through hip hop. The concept of edutainment begins right here. Your teacher is the first to approach hip hop spiritually and philosophically. Did you hear the word first? And the reason I'm pointing out first, again, author, the one who sets the trend is the authority. Your teacher is the first to approach hip hop spiritually and philosophically. Your teacher, who you are hearing right now, wrote the first science of rap, as well as the first gospel of hip hop. Your teacher is the first to call for an end to urban violence within hip hop through the Stop the Violence movement in 1989, Human Education Against Lies 1991, and lent support to the All in the Same Gang movement 1990. There was nothing like this before us. Again, maintain your maturity. This is not ego and bragging. These are the facts. And as students of hip hop, as apprentice of the temple of hip hop, don't let nobody tell you nothing about hip hop. Don't let nobody tell you they're great and you're small, or that your institution, oh, that's just some old something. No. That's how they diminish great colleges and those who originate. That's how they diminish. Oh, that ain't nothing, but yet you taking all the information from that nothing and creating a new something. So we got to be clear with this. Why am I telling you this? Because this is your empowerment. Your teacher did this. Your temple did this. Let's go further. Your temple, the Temple of Hip Hop, held the first hip hop cultural conference, a meeting of the minds, in New York in 1994, which was the first well-documented discussion by pioneering hip-hoppers regarding hip-hop's preservation as an authentic world culture. The first conversation had. We organized it, big up to G. Samo, who put the whole thing together, the logistics of it, and your assistant back in the days was Heidi Berelson. Okay, these are real people organizing. We did that work and was the first to do that work. This is now being passed on to you. In fact, it was at this meeting that your teacher, KRS-One, first introduced the concept of hip-hop as a global culture and documented the original vision and advice of hip-hop's actual pioneers. That's in the Gospel of Hip-Hop. We transcribed the meeting, that all portion of the meeting that we had. It's in our gospel, because that's where we take our cue from. We're not sitting here believing, oh, because KRS thinks it's like this, then that's what we gonna do. That ain't scholarship. We're basing what we're doing on facts, on evidence. We brought everyone together and said, what is it? What do we want for ourselves? How do we move? And when we did that, we wrote it down, because we knew in the future others would try to say, oh, you just talking. Oh, y'all had a meeting. So what? Can you prove it? Of course we can. We recorded it, filmed it, wrote it, and the people who were in the meeting are still walking around today. So we also have witnesses. You have to know all of this. This is hip hop scholarship. This is the scholarship right here. This is what you got to know. Your temple held the first worldwide hip hop census in 1997. First census for hip hop, 1997, which asked the hip hop community directly what it thought about itself, its cultural existence, and how we could improve ourselves as hip hoppers. Your temple established Hip Hop Appreciation Week every third week in the month of May. And during this week, on May 16, 2001, your temple, along with others, established the first hip-hop declaration of peace at the United Nations headquarters in New York, declaring hip-hop an officially recognized global culture, and the list goes on. Why am I saying this? Because again, this is your bullet. These are your bullets. I'm giving you ammunition for how you fire back when those try to belittle you, or tell you that what you're studying don't mean nothing, or the institution you're affiliated with, it ain't about nothing, or this. You're going to get people who are going to try to belittle you and so on. But this is the truth, and these are the facts, and this is what I swat people back with constantly. Some dudes know my history, so I show up, they don't even talk. Okay, they just don't even talk, because you know you're going to get hit with the facts. Others have spoken about the culture. We did the work. Let's continue. Your temple, your temple of hip hop, and actually I was just reading this again about establishing Hip Hop Appreciation Week, because I want to talk about that Hip Hop Appreciation Week this year, 2021. Hip Hop Appreciation Week. We got a lot going on, and we want to get into that. So I was just looking back at this again. Let me not forget to mention that as well. Don't forget to give me that note. Let me continue. The point here is that your temple teaches with real authority, authenticity, and accuracy. And as a scholar of this particular study, you now teach with the same authority, authenticity, and accuracy. This is the point. Maintain this level of excellence. This is what makes your scholarship truly special and culturally authoritative. You see, and let me stop here for a minute, because I'm trying to nail this point into your head here. Because KRS-One is your teacher, I am imparting onto you not just knowledge, but a certain respect, a certain tradition, heritage, lineage. Nobody else can give you the lineage except KRS-One because of who I am. So when others come forward and say, oh yeah, I'm a scholar of hip hop culture, I'm a scholar of the arts and sciences, anybody studying with the Temple of Hip Hop can say, but wait, my teacher is the architect of the culture itself. Fact. Now, what I'm studying here is from the mouth of the architect itself, which is our gospel, what we've been studying, and so on. You have the direct knowledge. Others are going to read about me in books. They're going to read what I said or didn't say or this, that, and the other, while you have direct access out the mouth as to what's going on. Your scholarship is way above what anybody can discuss talking about hip hop. There is no greater hip hop than right here. And I say that, now that's a little ego. Let me smear a little bit of the ego. Let me give you a little mayonnaise with the ego right there. But I will point it out. They say it is ego because I am proud of the Temple of Hip Hop. I am proud of the I'm proud of the work that we do and what we have done while others were sleeping. We was wide awake, and our work shows it. And you have to be awake to that work as well and continue it. Continue the legacy. Continue the heritage. This is what makes your scholarship truly special and culturally authoritative. Talking about hip hop and teaching hip hop are two entirely different things. I'll say it again. Talking about hip hop and teaching hip hop are two entirely different things. And any serious scholar of the hip hop arts and sciences should want to teach hip hop correctly and be taught from hip hop itself correctly. But over the last 20 years, the rush to further exploit hip-hop for its commercial value in the university system has inspired many to simply claim a scholastic authority regarding hip-hop that they really never earned or had. It's very simple. If you haven't mastered hip-hop, how can you teach any aspect of it? What exactly then are you teaching? Such unprofessional teaching and poorly resourced hip-hop courses expose the real intent of such courses and their instructors. In these desperate learning institutions, hip-hop, spelled in lowercase, is something that they can simply exploit and interpret in any way that they can understand it. And this is why their students fail at hip-hop with unfulfilled entertainment careers. This is what I and any real hip-hop scholar will continue to organize, stand, and fight against. Here, authentic hip-hop scholarship is all about truth, facts, and the actual authority to teach hip-hop. Such truth, facts, and authority begins right here with the Temple of Hip-Hop. There is nothing like us. Peace and welcome to the Temple of Hip Hop. Every week we meet like this in an effort to establish our unity of thought. We are building our actual nation, which begins with a strong and useful heritage capable of sustaining those hip hoppers that are to come after us. The Temple of Hip Hop is united in the fact that we are the first of our kind. We are hip hop's ancestors. Now that hip-hop exists in world history, hip-hop shall never not exist in world history. And the ways in which we conduct ourselves today creates the history and heritage that our children shall rely upon tomorrow. Those that understand the seriousness of this matter have united to form a temple for hip-hop, where hip-hop and its existence is protected, promoted, and preserved. Our work is behind the scenes, with the question being, sure, we may be able to use and exploit hip-hop for our perceived popularity and financial gains, but what about the life of hip-hop itself? What about the strength and vitality of hip-hop as culture, as our culture? Those that are united with the Temple of Hip Hop are concerned with these challenges facing hip hop. Going back to Minister Sun One's question, why are we the Temple of Hip Hop? Why are we united like this? Well, we're united like this because, first of all, we understand that there's going to be hip hoppers after us. Now that we exist in the world, we will never not exist in the world. So what about, thank you, my friend, what about this water? Hold on 1 second. So let me just get right back over to it. The idea here is that, as I was reading, there are those who just use the culture and exploit the culture. The Temple of Hip Hop, its membership, is concerned with those who are to come after us. Those who we know are going to be relying on us getting our act together today. Our actions or inactions, our behavior is the history of the future. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? If I do like this, okay, I just put this into hip hop's history. This move right here. I just put this into hip hop's history. Anything we do, say, where we are creating the heritage and history of a future people that we are not going to meet physically. Can you stretch your mind out that far? Can you see hip hop 300 years from now? This is what we're dealing with. I mean, can you see hip hop just 50 years from now? This is what we're dealing with. This is what unites us as a temple. We recognize that we are the ancestors today. So we ask, what about the strength and validity of hip hop as culture, as our culture? Those that are united with the Temple of Hip Hop are concerned with these challenges facing hip hop. Here, we have realized that hip hop belongs to us. Think about that for a minute. Hip hop belongs to you. It is your self-expression in the world. It's what you own. Imagine that. Think about that for a minute. Now, how do you care for that which is yours? In fact, most people, artists included, don't even approach hip-hop like it belongs to them. Many of the so-called pioneers of hip-hop still do not act as if hip-hop belongs to them. They themselves have a responsibility to protect, preserve, and promote hip-hop, but do they? I mean, sure, we always pointing fingers at the young kids. Oh, they don't know the history of hip-hop. Oh, they're not doing nothing to contribute to the culture. Oh, they're not. But what about the dudes who created the culture? What about the people who do know what's going on? What about them? Well, the Temple of Hip Hop is looking at both of these situations and saying, I think we're all screwing up right now. Young, old, whatever. We're not caring for that which is ours. Sure, you can always pay a pioneer to tell you what he or she has experienced as an entertainer. But how many pioneers have actually united around the idea of hip-hop as culture? Not many. Jealousy, fear, ignorance, and immaturity has held many pioneers back from even realizing their own goals within hip-hop. Unity and strength is our only way forward, and this is what the Temple of Hip-Hop is all about. Others have spoken eloquently about the vision of hip-hop as culture. But as you all know and have heard before, it is the Temple of Hip-Hop that has and will continue to do the work. From 1973 to right now, hip-hop is only 48 years old. It is still being developed even right now. As we speak right now, hip-hop is being developed. In comparison to hip-hop's existence in just 2050, we are all old school right now. Just to the people in 2050, we old school right now, okay? We are hip-hop's ancestors and heritage makers right now. So what shall we leave to the future, to our future? When our children look back on their history and heritage, what shall they see? How shall the whole world look at our children and their children's children in the future? The legacy, heritage, and history that we lay down today with our very actions regarding hip-hop is exactly what our children will be relying upon for their own global respect and their own cultural knowledge of themselves. This is why our Temple for Hip-Hop exists. The Temple of Hip-Hop is a hip-hop preservation ministry, archive, school, and society established in 1996. Our approach to hip-hop is cultural, which makes our approach to hip-hop unique. We approach hip-hop as a divinely inspired culture of peace and prosperity. Did you get that? We approach hip-hop as a divinely inspired culture of peace and prosperity, which for us begins at 1600 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, 1973. Yes, we do acknowledge and teach the traditional history of hip hop, beginning at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, with Kool DJ Herc as the recognized father of hip hop, along with other pioneers and artistic contributors. We do recognize the authenticity of this history, but our existence as a temple for hip hop and our approach to hip hop does not rely upon this history for our existence as a temple for hip hop. Make sure you understand that. We do teach 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. At the request of his sister Cindy, Kool DJ Herc comes out. Actually, he comes down to the community center and begins playing his music for his sister's birthday party. The party gets so loud that he has to take it out to the park. And then and the legend of hip hop is said to begin there. We do teach that. But the temple of hip hop is blessed in a unique way. And I'll show you this way right here. The temple of hip hop is unique in this way because the founder and first teacher of the temple of hip hop, KRS-One, was present at the birth of hip hop. In the summer months of 1973, when hip hop is said to have begun with Kool DJ Herc at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx, KRS-One lived on the same street at 1600 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx at the exact same time, August 1973. As hip hop has developed, I have developed. From day one, and even before that, hip hop has been my culture and my salvation. This puts the temple of hip hop in a unique position regarding hip hop. For us, hip hop is divinely guided. And this is what makes our approach to hip hop unique. Others may have different experiences with hip hop, but our experience with hip hop begins spiritually and at day one. As a temple for hip hop, we recognize the existence of an intelligent movement, a great spirit, God, guiding, protecting, and further developing hip hop even before we even knew we were being guided, protected, and developed. We are indeed proud of our work. This is the temple of hip hop. Now, I mentioned this to you at the beginning here because what I want you to understand is your defense, your shield, your sword, your intellectual weaponry. What is your intellectual weaponry? It starts off with you've mastered your craft. So nobody should be able to come and tell you anything. And also keep in mind that as the year rolls out, we will be going through what that craft is. We'll be going through breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, all the artistic and the cultural aspects to the craft. Because you don't, to be hip hop, to be a hip hop cultural specialist, you don't have to master just the artistic elements of hip hop. There's some of you that will master street knowledge only, or master street entrepreneurialism, or master street language. You'll become a linguist or help us to write new dictionaries and this kind of thing. This is why we teach 9 elements to hip hop as opposed to just 4. 4 are the basic artistic elements, breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing. That is the core 4 elements of hip hop. Zulu Nation teaches breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, knowledge, and overstanding as well. And we thank them for that. In the early days of hip hop, this is how Zulu Nation was approaching hip hop, breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, knowledge, and overstanding. The Temple of Hip Hop comes along and we say, well, out of breaking, MCing, graffiti art, DJing, and knowledge and overstanding, you get these 5 other elements that completes the culture. That's beatboxing, street fashion, street language, street knowledge, and street entrepreneurialism. And you notice we keep the knowledge in there, and we also keep the overstandings, which is in the gospel of hip hop. So the core tenets, the roots of our culture, coming from the Herculoids with Kool Herc and Zulu Nation with Afrika Bambaataa, going into well, really, we was the next organization at that point in terms of cultural preservation. The Temple of Hip Hop then takes its cue and continues on. I mention all of this because look at the root by which we are standing upon. Look at the root by which we are standing upon. The root in which we are standing upon is not just a gift, it's also a burden. It's not just a blessing, it's a burden too. Because you'll notice that like America, like the United States of America, their founders were some of the worst people in the world, but they are their founders. George Washington, especially Andrew Jackson, everybody on the money are criminals. Or I would say, respectfully, their morality can be debated. But all cultures bear this heritage because you start out at a very low place. You start out in a very immoral place. You start out in a desperate place is what the real word is desperate. You're scrounging and you're just scrounging. So you do things that are criminal, immoral, stupid, and so on. And you dump that burden onto your children. This is what culture is about. You dump that burden onto your children. And now your children can judge you for that and say, look at this stupidness. Or the wise children say, well, I realize that this is what it is. Let me improve upon my own heritage. I will not do what my father did. I will not do what my mother did. But I see that they did do this, this, and this. So let me take this, this, and this and progress the culture. Progress it. You notice most nations, I'll come right to the United States. You know, they acknowledge the slave owner, the rapist, the this. They say, yes, our forefathers, but those were dark times in American history. These are dark times. We don't go there. We know that's wrong, and we know, but they still telling you, and they're not giving up their ancestry. They're not dissing and downplaying their forefathers. And hip-hop better recognize that as well. If you're serious about nation building, if you're serious about civilization building, you can always criticize your ancestors. You can always criticize your ancestors. But what makes you a son, what makes you a daughter, what makes you a child of the ancestor is not only the criticism, but that you also are willing to carry the heritage forward. You carry the burden with you because you're improving it. You're not going back to the ignorance. You're not going back to the immaturity. You are the latest version of the heritage. And so you're going to take the best parts of your past and bring it to what you are now. And believe, your children will be judging you. So don't be so harsh on your ancestors, because you too will be an ancestor. And hopefully our children will look back on us and say, wow, they screwed up over there. I didn't like that right there. We're not continuing this. But we must continue this and this and this, because these worked. So we're gonna advance on what worked and leave behind what didn't work. And this is culture. This is heritage. So understand that this first part deals with you as the student. Don't let nobody talk down to you about your institution, the Temple of Hip Hop. We did all the work. Don't let nobody diss you as a hip hop scholar. You're studying not just with the originator of the hip hop teaching profession and the architect of the culture, but it's being passed on to you. This heritage is being passed on to you. That's the point to a temple for hip hop. We are putting heritage together and passing it on. We're not just telling you something, yo, read this or know this. We're telling you to read this and know this so that your character matches the heritage. When your character matches the heritage, you've received the heritage. Now you can pass it on. So speaking of passing on heritage, so G. Simone, we were talking, Simone and I, and actually on another level, Son One. I'll tell you how it went down. That, as you know, Hip Hop Appreciation Week is coming up. Hip Hop Appreciation Week is May 17th to the 23rd, 2021. And obviously May 16th, that Sunday just before the 17th, is the anniversary of the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. So I've been talking off and on. I hollered at Sun One, yo, we got to do something. Hip Hop Appreciation Week, and it's the anniversary. So there's a whole bunch of things that's landing. I'm going to talk to you about that right now. A whole bunch of things are landing on this time. Like, for instance, it's the 25th anniversary of the Temple of Hip Hop itself. And it's also the 20th anniversary of the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. This year, hip hop is 48 years old as well. And we look closely at these numbers. We look closely at the exactness, especially of the 20 years and the 25 years coming up on 2021. And so we started to organize. What do we start to organize? We said, well, we're going to turn up the volume. Those that was reading with us, you heard me say this last year, that we're turning up the volume this year on hip hop as culture. That we now know that people have matured in their thinking about hip hop. We had to wait. I'm not going to go into the whole thing with the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. You've heard me say this before, that when we first did the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, 2001, the hip hop wasn't ready for it. People were afraid. Certain hip hoppers actually fought against it, tried to sabotage and all of that. For us to unite as a culture, it's not that easy to try to bring a whole culture together. People don't agree. You know, people have problems. People are afraid, jealous. All of that is what you're dealing with. So in 2001, we put forward the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, but we knew that we were ahead of our time. So what we said then was every 10 years, we were going to take a look at the document and take a look at hip hop and see how much of the document we can get established within our culture every 10 years. Those that look at the definitions, you can look at the definitions, you'll notice we have a 10-year, we mark 10 years of ages up to 50 years, marking every 10 years. So this is 2021. We're actually looking at a new age, actually, and we're actually looking at how everything is lining up at this moment. Not only with the numbers, and now we're here with another anniversary, but how people are thinking today. Certain things that we wanted to discuss just 5 years ago couldn't be discussed because the level of mentality that our own community was at, as well as others outside of us was at, we couldn't get much done. But we know this, and I want to emphasize this. This is not a shock to us. We prepare for this, and we know this. So just like I read to you, 1989, Stop the Violence Movement. 1990, All in the Same Gang. 1991, as I read this to you, I'll understand that you're in that organization right now. And based on how you react to what is going on is not only going to determine your scholarship, but it's also going to determine what you really doing for hip hop, really. That this is not just entertainment for you, but that you're hearing what I'm saying and acting upon it, starting with your own character. So I mention this because this week, Hip Hop Appreciation Week, May 17th to the 23rd, 2001, is the 25th anniversary of the Temple of Hip Hop and the 20th anniversary of the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. And our theme this year is peace. But it was this year, it's this year also, every 10 years, that we look at things like the spelling of hip hop and how hip hop is perceived by others in dictionaries and so on. So this year, we're turning up the volume on the spelling of hip hop because we think that people are ready to have this discussion about hip hop based on what is going on socially in the world, the pandemic, and the way art has been treated in the pandemic and so on. People are now more able to see what we saw 20 years ago. And again, put the ego aside. We're not doing that. But realize how ahead of our time we really are. So realize that the ideas we put forward, they're not going to happen today or tomorrow or even next year. We have to wait and be patient with the consciousness of those who we are teaching. See, if you really are interested in the person you're teaching, you'll be patient with them and you'll wait. And we've waited, and we've got more waiting to do. But we've reached a certain place in the consciousness of people where hip hop can be discussed in more cultural ways. People are more apt now to realize hip hop as culture. We've been yelling for 20 years that hip hop is culture. Rap is something you do, hip hop is something well, now it's in the culture now. Now everyone realizes, yeah, hip hop is culture. Yeah, I rep the culture. I am hip hop. Yeah, hip hop is my culture. Now it's regular. But most of you know that when we first started this, okay, it was crazy. But I mentioned that to say that, so I got this letter going into the New York Times. And I got a letter going into the New York Times because I want the New York Times, or I'm asking that the New York Times spell hip hop with a capital H. Capital H, lowercase IP, space, capital H, lowercase OP. I'll be asking libraries, dictionaries, and others to join us on this campaign to spell hip hop in uppercase letters. Now, for some, this may seem like a small thing, and it is a small thing. But in terms of building hip hop culturally, this is the main thing right here. And I say this to us because I'm not going to really be tooting this horn publicly like this. I really want to get the work done. And sometimes when you tell everybody your plan, you don't get the work done. People act stupid and jealous and silly, and we don't have time for all of that. So I got this letter going into the New York Times for them to acknowledge hip hop as culture, and or at least as a proper noun. Listen to what, this is an excerpt of what I'm writing to them, and I'm going to share it with us because it's part of our work. And anyone that could help us with this work within our temple, you are greatly appreciated. Here's an excerpt of the letter that I'm sending to the New York Times. As you might already know, rap music is not hip hop. More than simply a music genre, hip-hop as breaking, breakdancing, MCing, rap, graffiti art, aerosol art, DJing, cutting, mixing, and scratching of recorded materials, among other elements like our specific style of dress, of speech, of trade and craft skills, has grown into a specific form of self-expression around the world, especially within the United States. In truth, the word hip-hop refers to a real people, a real community that is seeking to grow and develop in safe and productive ways. With that said, I am humbly reaching out to you in hopes that the New York Times will agree to begin spelling hip hop with a capital H as a proper noun, as a specific name of our unique culture and community. For us, hip hop spelled in lowercase as lowercase IP dash lowercase lowercase HIP dash lowercase HOP, or as hip hop, same spelling without the dash, diminishes the cultural existence of hip hop and shows little respect to the real community of people that actually exists as hip hop. How can we make this happen? I await your response, and I thank you for your time regarding this matter. Now, this letter is a little bigger than this. I'm just giving you the meat of it, but this is how I'm coming at the New York Times. And I'm saying, you know, you guys are the ones, because like if they spell hip hop, they announce that hip hop is now going to be spelled with a capital H, then everybody's going to follow suit. All the other news people and so on, they follow how New York Times spells things. And that's why we're targeting the New York Times to at least consider the spelling of hip hop with a capital H. From the New York Times, we go over to Oxford English Dictionary, or maybe the American Heritage, probably the American Heritage Dictionary next, then Oxford English, circle back over and get Webster. Or maybe we'll hit all of them at the same time, who knows? We are part of certain groups that put new words into dictionaries. So hopefully when the new words come around, we will argue this point again that hip hop should be spelt with a capital H and be defined in these dictionaries in its cultural sense. Oxford already did it. America's lagging behind. So we're not criticizing, but we're trying to help. Rest of the world already spells hip hop with a capital H. Why the New York Times is waiting, American Heritage Dictionary waiting, Webster waiting. Well, somebody got to speak up. And again, that's the job of the Temple of Hip Hop, or the work of the Temple of Hip Hop. So just know that we're on this campaign. This letter is going sometime this week. I want to get it spell checked and all this type of stuff. Have a few more eyes look at it. But this letter is going out this week, toward the end of this week. Or should I say, the end of this week. I get my days mixed up. Every day is the same day. Anyway, so just take that in. Know that. Let's move forward. In the spirit of this, turning up the volume on hip hop as culture, getting others that deal with our name to deal with it correctly, we had a conference call on Friday, myself, Simone, Sun One. We got on a conference call with 3 other executives from Sirius XM. Those that have Sirius XM, the satellite radio station that also bought Pandora as well, Sirius XM, we got on a conference call with the main programmers, the heads of the programming of the entire station. There were 3 of them, some dealing with urban, some dealing with all, some dealing with new content and stuff like that. So myself, Simone, and Sun One, we got on a conference call, and I'm just going to read you a little bit. I had already sent them a letter, but I'm not going to read the letter here because this is a quasi-public forum, and we are still in negotiation with XM Satellite. But what I can say to you here is what has already been said to them. And what I will add here is some of what we're asking XM Satellite to do. And by the way, they were excellent within the meeting. Both Sun One and myself, Simone included, we all came away from the meeting feeling like we could do something, like something can happen. So let me tell you why we called them and what the meeting was about. Our concerns rest with the use, and this is also part of the letter that I wrote to them. Our concerns rest with the use of the broadcast term, Hip Hop Nation, and its compatibility with the actual global community called the Hip Hop Nation. As mentioned on our February 5th conference call, we asked that Hip Hop Nation on Sirius XM upgrade its programming to include a more accurate depiction of the actual Hip Hop Nation. But more importantly, we asked that Sirius XM pay more attention to its own role as a leader in the ongoing development of hip-hop's actual culture. Now, do you see what we're arguing here? They have a station called Hip Hop Nation. And when you turn on the station, you're not really getting a representation of a Hip Hop Nation. You're getting just pop artists. And we're saying that the artists that are even on this station, they know nothing of the history of hip-hop. They don't even really respect it enough to want to learn. And some of them are even saying, I'm not hip-hop. I'm just an artist that happens to rap. And they're not, conforming to any cultural standards or anything. So as a broadcaster, Sirius XM, the Temple of Hip Hop approached the company saying, we are the Hip Hop Nation. We came up with the name. We are it. We would like Hip Hop Nation on Sirius XM to match more of what the real Hip Hop Nation is all about. And the 3 brothers that were on the phone discussing this with us, and I say brothers, they were everybody different races of people. But we all got on the phone. It was a wonderful call and also a prophecy fulfilled that everyone except the head of the company, everyone agreed that they was hip hop. The programmers, everybody was like, yes, we understand. We know exactly what this is. And they were eager to hear. They wanted to hear. They said, where are we out of balance? What more can we be doing? And they said, we open it up to the platform and speak your word. And I got a chance to speak. Simone, of course, the behind the scenes person, set the whole thing up. And Sun One got a chance to speak. And you know, it was interesting, just so you know, how the Temple of Hip Hop actually came to the table, because you look at them, I'm just speaking off the top of my head right now in that sense. Simone was the female representation there, the Kendake Queen Mother there, and she was trying to get on. You was trying to get on, but every time you got on, it would echo and delay, so you had to go to another room. But if you went to another room, then you couldn't man the whole situation. So it was a sort of a sacrifice, but yet a welcomed one, because we did this on our own. G. Simone organized it, and then of course when we had a chance to speak, I asked Sun One in terms of the time. I introduced him as the Temple of Hip Hop. And I was KRS-One on the phone. And I said, and the Temple of Hip Hop is here as well. And Sirius XM was interested in what the Temple of Hip Hop had to say. I must admit, Sun One, you did your thing over there in the corner, hiding behind a computer screen. But when it was time for him to speak, Sun One stepped up and spoke eloquently about the culture and what we need to do. And spoke several times because it was a conversation going around. And everyone was thoroughly impressed with how we came at them with suggestions as to how we can make this better. So we loaded them up with a whole bunch of stuff. And they're asking for more suggestions from us as they go back and take some of the suggestions we already gave them. And they're going to try to figure themselves out. So you're going to see changes to Sirius XM Satellites programming. And it's because of us. I say that humbly and respectfully. I say it in the same spirit that I say everything else. We're doing the work. Others are talking. I say that humbly. They're talking. But when it's time to put your money up, your time up, your reputation up, when it's time to get people on the phone and try to get a huddle together on behalf of our culture, the Temple of Hip Hop is unsurpassed in that regard. And this is just making me think, this is one of those moments where we walked up on Sirius XM. They wanted the meeting. We all sat down, took our hats off, rolled our sleeves up and said, how can we make hip hop's culture better? The head dude of the station was like, I know we could do better with Hip Hop Nation. He was concerned that the young kids don't even know hip hop's history, yet young white kids, and he was candid about it, that those who are more gravitating toward rock and blues and these things, they know all about the entire history. And they said it shows on XM. But when it comes to hip hop, in lowercase, everything is new, now, and young. And Sun One had to point out to them that, no, we're supposed to be guiding the youth. The youth are not supposed to be guiding us. We're supposed to be guiding the youth. Now, of course, you don't want to be a dictator and all of that, but if you are the elder, you know that bitch, hoe, and the stupidity. You know that all of that on the TV and on the radio is not helping our youth. You know it. And they do know it. But they themselves didn't have anybody stepping up and saying, hey, we're willing to help you with this. We are the culture. You're using our name. Why don't we come together and where everybody could benefit off the use of this name? And they bit down on it. They wanted it. So this is the last part of the letter, a part of the letter that I sent to them. I'm going to read this last part because this is what you got to know for your work. This is the work that the Temple of Hip Hop is actually doing. That's what we're talking about today. Unity of thought, unity of action. Why does the Temple of Hip Hop exist? Why are you here listening to me? Well, here it is. As we discuss, as a continue, I'm talking to XM Satellite. As we discuss the term hip hop, and by the way, this is what I'm going to send to them. This paragraph, you can't see it, but there's a portion of this that's already been said, and the rest of it is what I'm getting ready to send this week as a follow-up to our meeting. As we discuss, the term Hip Hop Nation is not simply the name of a Sirius XM broadcast channel. It is first the name of a real community, and how the Hip Hop Nation is portrayed on Sirius XM also impacts this real community for the better or for the worse. Of course, we would like hip hop's music to impact hip hop's culture for the better, and in no way are we criticizing anyone's music here. But it is indeed clear that our influence as leaders of this great culture, hip hop, demands that we take responsibility for how hip hop develops and affects the real lives of real people, especially real artists. So in the spirit of protecting and further advancing hip-hop's actual culture, I am humbly submitting the following ways in which SiriusXM can really help. 1. Join the campaign to spell hip-hop in uppercase as a proper noun, as the name of our culture and global community. We already discussed this, and they was with it, that and even though Sirius XM is not a grammatical, it's not a newspaper, it's not like that, but a company like this saying to their employees, saying even publicly, we spell hip hop with a capital H from now on at Sirius XM. That is a triumph for hip hop as culture, not just hip hop as music and entertainment, but hip hop as culture. That is amazing. Just raising lowercase h to uppercase H, you're recognizing us as a proper noun, as a specific thing. This goes a long way to our children's heritage 50 years from now. This little thing, click, 50 years from now, they get to feel this. 2, support Hip Hop Appreciation Week, which occurs every third week in May. This year, Hip Hop Appreciation Week occurs May 17th to the 23rd, 2001. Leading up to this week, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, established May 16, 2001, a document presented to the United Nations, sponsored by UNESCO, declaring hip hop an international culture of peace and prosperity. 3, speak of hip hop as a nation on Hip Hop Nation. As an example, promote the importance of political participation on the part of young people. Promote national learning excellence, scientific excellence, sports excellence, and artistic excellence related to those that participate in hip hop. Promote the legacies of today's graffiti artists, beatboxers, local DJs, and breakers, break dancers, on Hip Hop Nation. The idea is to talk about the whole Hip Hop Nation on Sirius XM's Hip Hop Nation. 5, with a younger audience in mind, produce entertaining educational specials on the real history and origins of hip hop for the audience of Hip Hop Nation. And notice how I mentioned for the younger audience and for the audience, because that's what they came back with us with. They were saying that Hip Hop Nation, like in other words, they're saying some of the requests that we had about upgrading Hip Hop Nation to sound more like Hip Hop Nation, they were saying that they do that on Shade 45, which is another station, or Rock the Bells, LL Cool J's Rock the Bells, which is another station. They say they break up the music by years and genres, and they admitted that that's limiting them from being able to really serve the culture the way in which people are listening. So they went back into their huddle to try to figure that out. But what we're saying to them here is we know that Hip Hop Nation is catering to a younger audience. So instead of just one day you just turn on Hip Hop Nation and we playing KRS and Rakim, it's the real Hip Hop Nation. We're not doing that. They already have a young audience there, and we want that young audience. We don't want that young audience to go away. We want to educate that young audience as to what hip-hop really is about, how they could benefit in it, what the heritage and legacy they are connected to, that's what we really want. So with a younger audience in mind, produce entertaining educational specials on the real history and origins of hip hop for the Hip Hop Nation audience. We're going to do that for them. We actually, Temple of Hip Hop actually has some audio of prominent hip hoppers explaining the origins of hip hop and so on. We'll produce that ourselves and give to them. 6, consider some kind of honoring of excellence in poetic writing and or storytelling from SiriusXM. Open other avenues for younger rap artists, to express their hip-hop excellence beyond the one-sided tales of street crimes, pornography, murder, and drugs. Let them know that there is airplay and artistic recognition for conscious rap artists and their lyrics on Hip Hop Nation. We talked about this. In fact, this was one of the issues that Sun One addressed with them as well. First part is, I came in with this piece about artists believe that if you write a conscious rhyme, you're not going to be played on radio. And I said SiriusXM has to redo that and let hip hop's audience, everybody know, no, conscious rap is welcomed here and we are going to play it. And of course it was amazing, Sun One, how you ran down all about 10 albums that were not getting played within the meeting. And it really, it brought, Sun One basically ran down a playlist for them that they're not actually playing that could actually balance the presentation that they call hip hop. And it was great. We was on point. We had facts. We knew what we were talking about. This spoke to that, and they wanted it themselves. They said, of course, conscious rap is welcome at SiriusXM, but we're not hearing it. The mixes, the way it's being presented is like the Hip Hop Nation is just gangsters, bitches, and hoes, and that's what it is. So we're there to try to fix that. Here's number 7. Have artists do public service announcements about the difference between entertainment and real life. And that's their young artists. We can script them, or if they have their own statements to make, but artists should come out and say, no, this is entertainment and this is how I get down, but this is real life. Young kids need to know that. Here's number 8. Have artists do public service announcements addressing depression, suicide, bullying, and drug abuse, and where to get help. The idea is to approach SiriusXM's Hip Hop Nation as the voice of hip hop's actual nation. A nation, Hip Hop Nation, you could play all the gangsta and the bitch and the hoe all day, but even if you play that, where's that point where you turn up the volume on voting, for instance, or turn the volume up on becoming a politician? This is all national talk. Where are the jobs for hip hoppers? Where are hip hoppers excelling and exceeding at? This first part about consider some kind of honoring of excellence in poetic writing and or short storytelling from SiriusXM. That part right there, we talked about an award show. And of course, I really love their answer because they didn't want to do an award show because they said it's corny. It always self-serving, and they didn't want to look like they were just doing an award show because it was self-serving. But then we had a deeper conversation about the fact that SiriusXM is becoming a leader in hip-hop's development. All the DJs are there, everybody's listening there, so on. So it is sort of like their responsibility as leaders to validate this one, that one, and validate the conscious. Validate what we know to be excellent. Not dissing nobody's art. Maybe we'll have a section for the gangster and the coke and the crack. We may have a coke and crack award in this sense over here. But we have to show young people that there is an excellence in your performance of hip-hop. There is a mastery to your presentation of hip-hop. That it's not just about I can just do anything and say it's hip-hop, because then we won't have no heritage. There's nothing to pass on. Every day we got to start over from the beginning. So That's what this is. That's what this is really all about. Here's the last one. Finally, this is number 9. Finally, ask the artists being played on Hip Hop Nation if they consider themselves part of Hip Hop's nation. If they consider themselves part of Hip Hop's nation, have them say, "I am hip hop," just before their song comes on. They may even be encouraged to listen to a recording regarding the origins and history of hip hop. Now, this right here also we're requesting from XM Satellite, because in the early days, and you'll notice it in the Gospel of Hip Hop as well, in the movement section of the Gospel of Hip Hop, you'll notice that that I was saying that originally when I was talking to the congregation in 1994 about the Gospel of Hip Hop, I was saying that this book, The Gospel of Hip Hop, should be given to everyone. It should be, record companies should have a box of these books. And if you come into the record company and the A&R guy was supposed to say to you, the one signing you was supposed to say, "Do you consider yourself hip hop?" And if you said, "No, I don't consider myself hip hop, I just do this," then there it is. You're a rap artist, and you have a category. But somebody else says, "Yes, I consider myself hip hop. I'm part of the hip hop culture." Then the record company itself should hand you the Gospel of Hip Hop. The record company itself should say, "Here, you should know something about your history. You should know something about your culture." And if not the Gospel of Hip Hop, something that expresses the authenticity of hip hop's culture, some real historical documentation, the basics that you need to know. The record company can come up with it on its own. The film company can come up with it on its own. They have, for film, they have organizations, I'm trying to think of the others, probably PETA I'm thinking about, that there's organizations when they're shooting movies that if you have an animal on set, there are organizations that have to be paid to come on the set to make sure you're not abusing the animal or that the animal's being taken care of in a certain kind of way. And we have argued for years that hip hop should be the same way. You should hire a hip hop cultural specialist if you're going to use the name hip hop in any configuration. Who's advising you on the use of that name? Just the person you hired? Well, we can see that that's not really working out, because there's Hip Hop Nation and there's our culture, the name of our nation, the name of our culture being depicted in ways other than the culture. And I just turned to this here because I'm not going to read. My reflexes just turn into it. In the movement section, whenever y'all get to, you can read it for yourself. But that was the original plan. So the original plan was, if you was hip hop, you got some information on hip hop. And what we noticed is that because that plan did not connect, the hip hop's culture, its community, was not ready for this. And then the record companies collapsed. So now people just in their house going, "I'm hip hop, and here's how I'm gonna do it." And that's why we at the situation we at right now, where young people don't even know what hip hop is. And it's not their fault, it's our fault. And it's not even really our fault, we didn't seize the moment. And the moment was in the 90s. But again, and I'm not saying anything, but if somebody's sitting there preaching, going, "Yo, we need a legal defense fund, we need a health fund, we need a temple, we need our own schools while we're rich. Put the Cristal aside and let's build a hip hop museum. Let's build an archive." Nobody wanted to hear this. Let's get some land and start a city. Nobody wanted to hear this. In fact, some took the idea and ran with it. But anyway, when we first said all of this, nobody was with it. And for several reasons. Jealousy was a big part of it. And the other part is that KRS-One said it. So they're like, "Oh, no, I'm not doing nothing with him," And so then it became, I can do it myself. All of this happened. But what happened? In the end, Now here we are without the resources. Without, we can't save our own people from what's going on in life. And that's why I decided to turn up the volume. I turned it up last year before COVID. We said we got to turn up the volume on the Temple of Hip Hop and on what we're doing, which is why we're doing this. But even this requires a certain character. Even this requires a certain level of mind where you got to be willing to see that we are the ancestors. We are the beginning of something great. And us getting it together here at the beginning is going to determine what our kids get in the future. This is why we're approaching the New York Times, why we're approaching SiriusXM, why we're approaching dictionaries, universities, because we're getting our culture together. We're doing the work. And I say that again, no pride and ego on this, but I wish others would do the work. I honestly, I will say, this is not something that, I say we do the work and we're the only ones. Well, we're the only ones by default. Okay, we're the only ones by default. We've been preaching this same message since the Stop the Violence movement. And it seems like we're the only ones that are willing to go to these companies and speak on behalf of hip hop. I didn't mention my album one time. I think we mentioned, we caught homie out there. Now that I think about it, we was talking and he had brought up, one of the other programmers had brought up the fact that, I have KRS's new album. I'm just trying to decide what to play. And I was like, well, you know what? That's what that is. We'll leave that alone. But we didn't mention my album. I'm sitting there talking to 3 programmers. I could have easily been like, yo, but wait a minute. Can you play my music? Can you when are you going to play my next song? It wasn't about that. We said, when are you going to approach hip hop accurately? That's why we're having our meeting. That's why we're here to discuss. That's not making me better than anybody. That's a job. That's a responsibility toward my future. And those that can unite with me on this thought, on this particular thought, if you can unite on this thought that we are the first, we have to unite to preserve this particular culture in a particular way for the future that is to come after us. They are depending on us getting this right. And that's why I'm willing to do this every week. That's why we meet here every Sunday, 7 o'clock, the Temple of Hip Hop. So that's going to conclude today's lesson. It's a short one, I know. And maybe, I don't know, someone, if there's any questions that you picked up, but if not, I am going to clock out in that sense and leave you with this message. And you already heard the message. We're doing this for the future. But I also want to just hammer home about the importance of your institution and why learning from KRS-One is important to your scholarship. Those that don't learn from KRS-One, they don't have the authority to teach hip-hop culturally. They're always going to get punked by people like you who took the course, who have heard from KRS directly. Today, people play games with it. They say, like in other words, I'm here now, so people don't pay much attention to it. But I learned this with Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, when I was learning it with Kwame Ture, touring with him, lecturing and stuff like that. People took for granted that Kwame Ture was right there. I mean, of course, everyone knew who the man was, but some took it for granted that he was right there. And I never took that for granted. I know exactly who Stokely Carmichael is. I know exactly who Kwame Ture is. I didn't take that for granted. And as a result of not taking that for granted, I gained something. It's not him. He could care less. He's one of the most humble dudes in the world, Kwame Ture. But I knew who he was, so I took that on and took the words coming out of his mouth. He has about 4 or 5 books out on him. I may have read 2 of them, okay? I read up on Kwame Ture at least, But what's most important is that I heard the word come out of his mouth. I heard his character. You know, I seen his character. I felt his character. I seen why he said this and when he said it. It wasn't just words in a book or you say it and that's it. There was other stuff. He had a beer in his hand when he said it. He was drinking a Coca-Cola when he said it. We just finished eating dinner and he got up and then said it. All of that is culture. All of that is heritage. And you can't get that just by reading a book or even seeing something, a picture and so on. You got to hear from the original sources themselves. And we're not always going to be right. Let me point that out too. We are the originals. So we're not going to be right. We're depending on our future to improve upon what we're doing, just like we are improving upon what our ancestors did. So that's the lesson for today, y'all. Son one, are we out?
Well, we do have questions, or a couple questions.
Okay, I'll take a few. I'll take a few before we bounce.
How do we offer our services to contribute towards the growth of the Temple of Hip Hop and hip hop culture?
Are you being picked up on the mic?
I'm pretty sure I am, yes.
Okay. So I don't have to repeat the question. Say it one more time. You have to repeat it.
How do we offer our services to contribute towards the growth of the Temple of Hip Hop and hip hop culture?
Well, there's two different questions. Let's start with the Temple of Hip Hop, then we get over to hip hop culture. The Temple of Hip Hop, the way to support the Temple of Hip Hop is through unity of thought. That's what the Temple of Hip Hop is. Unity of thought. What is our unity of thought? Our unity of thought is that hip hop is a divinely inspired culture. It is not just music. It is not just entertainment. Music and entertainment is a part of our culture, but hip hop in and of itself is what we call the intelligent movement. Hip meaning intelligence, awareness, hop meaning movement. What more are we than intelligence moving? What more is God than an intelligence moving? We see our world through this paradigm. Now, of course, you could, just like I take shade, like now I'm looking at the world through hip hop. I can always take that off and see the world through other mediums. I can see the world through this. But when you say I am a hip hop scholar or I am part of the Temple of Hip Hop, the way in which you help the temple is by unifying in its thought. We are waging a battle of thought. That's what this is about. This is what culture is about. Is who controls the power to define things. And that's where the Temple of Hip Hop is at. That's why we have definitions and refinitions and so on. So first, your unity of thought, knowing the lessons, being able to speak on behalf of hip hop the way we all do, and so to speak, towing the line. Knowing the script, towing the line, unity of thought. That's what grows the Temple of Hip Hop. Secondly, righteousness. Oh, this is money. This is money. Okay, righteousness. We have to try our best not to get caught up in illegal activities, immoral activities. We have to be an organization that's not so, like we don't do no wrong. That ain't even hip hop on that level. But our intent has to be excellence. The intent of us. We will fall. We will trip. We will stumble. Yes, we will. But when you fall and you trip and you stumble, where's your brothers and sisters to pick you up, dust you off, and say, don't do that again? Or are you just in a situation where others could just grab you, convict you, and kill you? Simple and plain. They're not your family, so they don't have no love for you. They don't have nothing for you. What we need is a body of people that love one another, willing to forgive one another, willing to look past each other's faults. Sure, we can argue them. You last week, make sure we know what it is. But love your brother, love your sister, speak critically but within love. If we could form a society like that, we'll be on top of everything. There'll be no one that could even reach us, because this is what every religion, every revolutionary organization, churches, mosques, synagogues, everybody arguing with each other. Can nobody get along? If the Temple of Hip Hop can create a society where we manage to get along with one another, because we're all looking for righteousness, we're all looking to be excellent. So we're not going to argue with one another. We're not going to steal from one another. We're not going to harm one another. Once we establish that, we've established hip-hop's culture. We've established the nation. We have learned how to cooperate. That's the beginning of sovereignty. So how do you help the Temple of Hip-Hop? First, unite in the thought that we are a culture. There's some people coming after us, and we got to get our act together. Then realize that if we could unite as a society that actually follows the tenets of its own gospel, perform the principles of its own gospel without hypocrisy and contradiction, you right here, and we all are. You judge me by this, and I judge you by this. If we could become a society like that, we are undefeated. There is nothing that can come in and destroy us as we move toward God and toward righteousness. Because once we get there, our children are safe forever. Forever. They are safe forever. And that's the job of the elder. That's the job of the seed. That's the job of the seed. So now, last point on the Temple of Hip Hop, and we'll move over to the culture. There is a financial part to this. In the gospel of hip hop, we make it clear we are not here asking for anybody's money. Let's be clear. And let me be clear in this way. I'm not bragging, oh, I got money, I don't need your money. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I never understood how a person can claim a relationship with God and still be broke where you can't do God's work. Because God's people are always broke. We know that. But you're never broke to the point where you can't do God's work. You may be broke. You couldn't buy the car you wanted. You couldn't get the house you wanted. But when it's time to do God's work, you always have enough. Right before you get ready, and the gospel preaches on this, right before the trip, the perfect car comes. Just before the meal, you get the perfect preparation. And that's for those that walk this path, like myself. This is the path I walk. So I know the results of this. And the idea is that when we started the Temple of Hip Hop, this wasn't about asking a congregation to support us. This was not about coming to people that are already struggling and telling them to give me half of what's in your pocket. That's not what this is about. God takes care of us. Our knowledge of hip hop takes care of us. Our mastery of what we teach takes care of us. So the Temple of Hip Hop will exist forever. It is what it is. Our principles are not based in the world. It's based in heaven. And people play games with that. They say, oh, yeah, I'm with God, I'm with God. But the minute the bills are due, your whole insides are crunchy. And of course, I'm not saying that in any way. Of course, when the bills are due, everybody get crunchy when the bills are due. But if you walking with God, you know that you was always taken care of. Something happened, something miraculous always came there for you. Well, we're walking in that path. We're walking in that. And so we don't ask people to support the Temple of Hip Hop financially. Now, having said all of that, there is something to be said about our active membership. The Temple of Hip Hop is looking for 100 members willing to spend $100 a month with us. This is a separate situation that has to do with buying land, erecting our temple, like building an actual temple. Think of it more as crowdfunding, more of private crowdfunding. We call it membership. You pay your membership dues, we accumulate the money and purchase the things we need. I'll give you an example. Just recently, I was talking to Sun One about looking at what the temple has right now in our treasury based on the dues and what we've all put in and so on. And I was saying that we were talking about we needed interviews. We need interviews for a fresh new interview, fresh interviews from the icons and from younger people today. We're redoing the history of hip hop, which is part of this whole Hip Hop Appreciation Week, our 20th anniversary, and so on. So we was going to pay out $300 as an honorarium, which is a fair honorarium. Actually, AFTRA, those that know, the American Federation, actually they just kicked Trump. They just threw Trump out of SAG and AFTRA. These are unions that set certain prices so that the artists don't get ripped off, and a price to appear on camera is about $330. Like, you're supposed to pay somebody the minimum you're supposed to give somebody, according to AFTRA and SAG, which are unions. You got to give them $330, which is called an AFTRA or SAG royalty. Here's $330 for your interview. So we took that and we said, okay, if the standard is $300, we'll just do $300 flat as an honorarium for your interview. I was going to pay it out my pocket and just grab the first, say, 6 interviews. But we sat and we thought about it and said, but no, we have to also keep a record and a story about how we did this. So it's not just about me reaching in my pocket and paying. It was about, no, the Temple of Hip Hop should pay. The money we made with the dues should go into Kool Herc's pocket, for instance, $300 to him, $300 to some new rapper or new DJ that has affected hip hop's history, even down to $300 to Drake and to 50. It's not about the money. It's just about, this is the honorarium. This is the across the board fair honorarium that everyone is getting for their interview about the history of hip hop from their perspective. So I say all of this to say that when it comes to the money, this is what we spend our money on. This is what we would like to spend money on. Of course, we don't have much money in the Temple of Hip Hop's treasury. We put most of the money into the treasury to keep things going. But it would be nice if we committed, if those who are listening to me now, if you committed to the $100 a month, $25 a week. Commit to the $100 a month, which is $1,200 a year. If we had 100 people spending $100 a month with us, we'd have $10,000 a month operating costs, and which is $120,000 for the year. With that, we could at least, we probably could buy land somewhere, but I'm even thinking if we erected a temple in Orlando, Florida, where Disney World is, because you want to be where the tourists at, or we went to Las Vegas and opened the temple there, because again, you want to be where you want the flow of people to be there. You look at these areas. Yeah, we could save up a cool $40,000, $50,000 after a 6, 7, 5 month period and establish a temple of hip hop on the earth just with our dues. That is a political statement more than, we need the money to do this. It's more of us showing our sovereignty as a temple, showing our independence as a temple, that we can come together, put money together. Nobody's getting ripped off. Nobody's stealing the money. Nobody running up and down. Nobody know where the money went. All that got to get put to the side. We have to prove that we can handle finances. And that's where this other side comes from, which says if you are an active member, and thanks, by the way, to all the active members that do send in their dues to the Temple of Hip Hop, I would hope that you see that your money is going to a good place. I mean, I say that spiritually because I'm not privy to take money for myself out of the dues. I don't do that. But the idea of the fact that the Temple of Hip Hop does have this there gives me even the motivation to be the type of artist that I am. To be there. You see the type of videos we put out. You see the type of songs we put out, what our stance is within hip hop. Well, that demands an independence, a financial independence, an intellectual independence, an organizational independence. So I'll put a period on this. I hope you guys understand exactly what I'm saying here, that no, we're not looking for our congregation or members to pay to be part of the Temple of Hip Hop. It's not necessary. We have money and we will spend it on the preservation of hip hop. But there is this other piece that says, no, we could use 100 people spending $100 with us. And we need to rely upon you. All organizations need that wing. And we're growing that wing. And we'll massage and grow that wing and make sure that we have a robust treasury based on dues and even merchandise, things we didn't get into it yet, but the Temple of Hip Hop has a t-shirt or a hat or something. Everybody involved should buy a shirt, buy a hat, make sure you have the gospel. These things matter too. They all go into the treasury. So all of this matters as well. When CDs come out, whatever. I just dropped a book. That's not really Temple of Hip Hop, but you can always support KRS-One. Just dropped Real Niggas, a look at institutional racism through an intellectual analysis of the N-words. Make sure you guys heard that or seen that. We just put out a 2.5-hour tutorial talking about the etymology of the word nigger. Go and check that out. So, and the other part was shorter. How do you support hip-hop culture?
Hold on, let me say, that's $3.33 a day in a month.
$3.33 a day for the Temple of Hip Hop, and I love that number.
That's right.
$3.33 a day. If the Temple's not worth $3.33 to you, or if what we're teaching is not worth $3, and it seems so funny. It seems like, wow, $3.33. But, when you talk about $25 a week or $100 a month, that's when it starts to be like, wow, that's what is that? But when you look at it as $3 a day, basically, it does start to question priorities and, what are you spending money on and how deep do you really want to go with the preservation of hip hop. So move over to the cultural side. You support the culture in the same way that you support the temple. In fact, being part, matter of fact, let me get that tissue again, somewhere over there. I think I left it over here. Let me just get that. Just by being part of the Temple of Hip Hop, thank you, you are supporting the culture. And that was the main part to what I was saying at the beginning of this particular teaching, that being part of the Temple of Hip Hop, just being here, just joining this call right now, you're preserving hip hop culture. You're part of the preservation of the culture. Like I always say, people don't know that they're in history until it's too late. Like no one knows they're in history until it's history. And then they say, oh, wow, I was there, or I could have, I should have. But the idea of being conscious is to know that you're in history right now and act accordingly. So how do you help the culture? What supports hip hop as culture? The Temple of Hip Hop. Let me even use the word loyalty. I wasn't going to say unity, but your loyalty to this mission helps the culture, because I don't see too many people doing this. Let me say this also humbly. I don't know that anybody can do this, to be honest with you. Because even the people at Sirius XM, I mean, some high-powered people. They didn't have to get on with us at all. But they knew who KRS-One was, and they knew the work of the temple as well. They brought it up a few times, especially one of the dudes that do the urban. They knew exactly what it was. They know exactly who we are. So there's something about the respect, something about the respect that matters here as well, not just with the temple, but with the culture of hip-hop. Stay out of trouble. This is what helps the culture. Stay out of trouble. Be excellent. Be excellent. Be helpful. Be harmless. This is what really helps cultures. Psychopaths, murderers, thieves, rapists, liars, that ain't never helped no culture. Never helped no culture. It's the teacher, the philosopher, the minister, the man or woman of God, the shaman, priest. That is what has always pushed culture forward and pushed civilization forward. That's what we should be looking for. Give me another one before I go.
Is fasting every 7 days mainly about fasting from food, or can it be fasting from anything?
Read your gospel. Every 7 days we fast. On the surface level, it's every 7 days. Yes, you should fast from food every 7 days. Drink teas, water-based soups, cut down on the sugar, the salt, the dairy, the flour, all of that type of stuff every 7 days. You'll add years to your life if you could just do it one day out of the week. But that's difficult to do that one day. If you eating junk for 6 days, that one day you ain't gonna make it. You may get 2 hours in, but you're gonna hit back. So it's really a lifestyle. So the 7-day fast is not just about food. Remember, this knowledge is for kings and queens. Remember that. As with most holy books, this knowledge is not for the average person. This knowledge is for the attuned hip-hopper. This is for the person who has their eye on vegetarianism, who has their eye on breathing exercises, who has their eye on meditation, who a lot of this they read in the gospel and say, oh, I know this, I've heard this, this matches my character. I think Son One was reading something about this earlier, about you'll know the truth when it hits your character. You'll know if you're part of the nation or not because of words, but because of how it hits your character. So, I'll just leave it there. Let me make sure I answered the question. Reiterate that one more time.
Is fasting every 7 days mainly about fasting from food, or can it be fasting from anything?
And again, read your gospel. Read the section freestyles, the freestyle section of the gospel. Let me say this other point. I'm glad you said that again. So having said that about food, in the gospel, the food is not the only way to fast. We talk about fasting from money, the spending of money. You'd be surprised. People cannot stop spending money. They can't go a day in their life without pulling out something to pay for, to purchase. That's an addiction. That's almost slavery. Can you go a day or 2 days without spending no money? Can you go a day without talking? Close your mouth and say nothing for 24 hours. Some people can't even do it. They feel weird. They have to say, They can't even, you got to say something. But these are disciplines that get you in control of yourself, because that's the point. People can't control themselves, so they can't get to where they got to go. The arm going here, leg, everybody, things going in different directions. Once you get yourself centered, now you're focused and you can just walk over to your success. But if your mind is thinking one thing, the heart's thinking something else, the gut thinking something else, and who knows what else thinking something else, then, where you're going to go. You need that centeredness in your life, and that's what fasting is really all about. It's the control of yourself. It's the control of your cravings, and those cravings are not just food. Those cravings are talk and money spending and All these little things. Smoking weed, marijuana. Can you stop for a day? Every 7 days, stop smoking weed. Can you do that? And it shows you as well, because if you can't, then it shows you where you at. If you can, it shows you where you at. No judgment, but you got to be able to look at yourself and see where you are in your own personal development. And that's what fasting also does. Any more?
So the answer is yes and yes.
Yes.
How does a chef fit into the Temple of Hip Hop? I cook professionally and I would like to integrate hip hop into my cooking.
Just go ahead and do it. If you say hip hop, though, remember that hip hop is about transforming subjects and objects to match your consciousness. Remember what Grandmaster Flash did with the turntable. The turntable was first an appliance, like a stove or an iron or a telephone. It was an appliance, like a hammer, like that, like a freezer. Because Grandmaster Flash rethought the appliance, he turned it into an instrument. It's sort of like saying, when I put my fists up, where does my hand go? Or where does the palm go? Now I open the palm. Where did the fist go? Is the fist not still here? The fist is right here. So where did the palm go? It's the same thing as saying, right now I am the teacher. But when I leave here, I will be a father. At times I will be a husband. Other times I will be a son. Other times a brother, back to teacher. Where does all of these titles go when you're being one thing? They don't go anywhere. They're still there. So we look at that and we say, then what is everything? Everything is my interpretation of it. So as a chef, look at food in the same way that Grandmaster Flash looked at the turntable. They say this is a tomato. What do you say it is? Any more?
What did I miss?
Everything. Everything. And nothing. Because you are everything. Any more before we go? We out.
I would like to go over what you said.
Son One, come up here and take us out on the Temple of Hip Hop. The lesson is done, but I would like to hear your summary of the lesson. I also will be grading that summary right now. And so Son One is going to take us out. Thank you again. Tomorrow we meet again, Sunday, 7 o'clock. Son One, take us out on the summary.
Peace and much love again. I just wanted to point out again with what was read earlier that the gospel itself, being physically produced in this fashion, 2009, holds evidence of our thought of hip hop as a nation itself. Just so that you know, as more ammo or more oomph to your spear, as to what the work actually is. Now, I wanted to point out that in having the meeting with SiriusXM, seeing how this is just a regular day for our teacher, KRS-One. I felt very privileged to be a part of it. Of course, to represent who wouldn't want to be at this meeting when something so dear as our heritage, as hip-hop's heritage, is being discussed and trying to be formed so that it actually helps us to grow, was a major privilege, in which, again, always brings me back down to realize when I am in history, or that I am in history, and that I'm in hip hop's history. It's real history. And to see what occurs from, or the efforts of our teacher is really amazing, that someone actually cares for the youth, for the way hip hop is being portrayed, for the artists that don't have any representation, or essentially aren't being asked their opinion about any of this whatsoever. The fact that he represents without being, or there's no camera there. Well, technically, because we were on a Zoom call. But what I'm saying is, it wasn't for show. It wasn't. It's because of a real, actual, genuine care that you have to know. Many people participating in hip hop's entertainment really don't have a continuous concern about. It's not their everyday, and I can guarantee you, as a witness to it, and just to let you know that you should know that no, this is every day for us. We're constantly talking about how hip hop can be better, how we're doing our best to arrange hip hop for the future, not just for ourselves, but no, we have kids. And we know we're gonna have grandkids, and we know they're gonna have kids, and that hopefully that there's something left on this earth that will benefit them and aim them towards peace, love, unity, having fun, health, love, awareness, and wealth. That this is what hip hop as culture is for us. And that we're not going to just stand by idly and just try to get some music off. That's not what it's about. And this coming from, I would say not arguably, the greatest to actually do it. Who could just do it, and that's it, and not care. So I want to make sure that you realize that, or it's my privilege and honor to be a witness as an apprentice of the Temple of Hip Hop in the Teacher KRS-One, that this is all very, very real. And it's nothing. This isn't a facade. There's nothing fake about what's going on here. Again, hopefully, when the truth hits you so much that you then realize, no, wait, right. History is happening, and it's fleeting. It's going by. You must know that keep in mind the point that we are supposed to unify. This is the temple, or where the Temple of Hip Hop is existing now. And many have the opportunity to actually be a part of it and be here to physically help, if not financially help from afar. But the time is going by. And you should not mistake that. And no, we're in history right now. You sitting watching, you're watching history right now. Or you have been for the past 2 hours. And you're going to get off and live history yourself. And so, for me and those of us who have had these conversations of the Temple of Hip Hop and have said, oh yes, no, we want to come together. We got to build Hip Hop City. We need our own Temple of Hip Hop, and all this. It's happening, and you should really try to figure out a way, because you're going to look back and see that it just passed you. And I know how much that could possibly hurt, because I could imagine if I was at home watching this and just couldn't break out of the norm of what everybody else expects me to do, when my care for hip hop is so deep and real to me. I'm concerned when I wake up, concerned when I'm doing stupid stuff. Hip hop comes into my head. I'm like, and hip hop is consciousness, and culture is always on my mind. Everything I see, it does go through that. So if you're of like mind and of like soul, I just want to be a warner to say that hip hop is going to last forever. These moments won't. Hip hop is going to continue and continue. But these are precious times and precious moments where a lot of your wishes have been granted and you're just not participating in them. So I don't know who that was for, or the spirit was just hitting me, because again, this is a real heritage. This is very real, and to know that yes, the Temple of Hip Hop is where the teaching of hip hop comes from. Our teacher is where the teaching of hip hop comes from. To be able to have that pride and that honor, to know that you are a part of the original, you are part of the first, and then not only that, but what was done with it, the care for people that really, who knows whether or how much appreciation is really reciprocated. But the care is still there nonetheless. And this is the work that we want to do, that we've wanted to do, and that we will continue doing. I'd advise you guys to go back, listen to this again, or what teacher laid down today, because it's very, very important that you realize what this is. And it's really for your empowerment, not necessarily ours. So that you know that this is right. So with that, I bid you all a good night. Peace and much love to you and your families. And I hope to see you soon. Peace and much love.